Lab 257 Part 09 by Michael C. Carroll. The Disturbing Story of the Government's Secret. Part 2. The Safest Lab in the World. 5. The Age of Science. Continuing. DOC's prized possessions. Early operations at Plum Island boomed during the prosperous 1950s. There were the early breakthroughs with brucellosis. There was the innovative propagation of foot and mouth disease virus in kidney cell cultures by doctors Callis and Bachrach. But before any research could be done, Plum Island had to first get hold of the germs. Doc Shahin referred to his viruses as his prized possessions, and stored them on dry ice under lock and key. During the 6-month period in 1953, Shahin and his Mexican campaign colleague, Colonel Mace, then the Army's biowarfare commander on Plum Island, secreted 131 strains of 13 different germs on the island, akin to Captain Kidd stowing his own pirate booty on adjacent Gardiner's Island some 300 years earlier. Shahin's and Mace's clandestine treasure trove was equally worthy of a white skull and crossbones emblazoned on a black flag. Listed on the now declassified inventory of animal viruses and antis were procured by the cooperation between the Chemical Corps and the U.S. Department of Agriculture and stored at Plum Island are the starter strains of the germs still housed on Plum Island: blue tongue, Rift Valley fever, African swine fever, fowl plague, sheeppox, Newcastle disease, goat pulmonitis, Mycobacterium butyricum, Tezens disease, vesicular stomatitis, virus diarrhea of cattle, rinderpest, foot and mouth disease, and 12 ampules, hermetically sealed, bulbous glass vessels, of a germ listed as N. How they got their hands on the viruses reads like a Ian Fleming novel. It was sort of cloak and dagger business, recalled scientist Dr. George Carroll, Plum Island's first biological security officer. Shahin picked up the hot, live rinderpest from the Army's top-secret Project 1001, named after the famous Arabian Nights tales, deep within the Kenyan jungle. He brought it with him to Great Britain's Purbright Virus Laboratory near London, where he met up with Colonel Mace and Dr. Carroll. There the trio bought bovine and guinea pig tissues infected with 6 types of 16 different strains of foot and mouth disease virus, forking over to the lab's director a U.S. Treasury check for $5,000. Federal law forbade the virus on mainland United States soil. So after overseeing its intricate packaging, Mace, Shahin, and Carroll rode back with the test tubes and ampules across the Atlantic on a U.S. Navy freighter. They were placed carefully inside a heavy canvas bag, padlocked inside a strong wooden box, placed in a stainless steel box. The men kept it within their sight the whole trip. In the deep waters of Gardiner's Bay, just south of Plum Island, the freighter's screws came full stop and set anchor. Unloaded onto a tugboat, which looked like a dinghy next to the massive freighter, along with its 3 chaperones was a shiny hinged metal box, glistening in the bright sunlight, stenciled property of the U.S. government on all sides. The tugboat slowly chugged to Plum Island harbor, where it put its precious cargo ashore. Soon after, other viruses, similarly sealed, made the journey to Plum Island, sailing from the far corners of the globe, North and South Rhodesia, Nanking, Tokyo, India, Thailand, Palestine, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Kenya Colony, Nakuru, Kabet, South Africa, Orange Free State, Entebbe, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, from nearer reaches, West Germany, Italy, France, Great Britain, Mexico, and even from within the nation's borders. Fort Detrick and Cornell University, courtesy of Dr. Hagen. Each bug was frozen inside corked vials or ampules, tucked in hinged metal canisters, and carefully packed in boxes bound with padlocked iron straps. The boxes were then locked in a dry ice cabinet, which itself was inside a bomb-proof vault. "I have trouble getting into this stuff myself," said Carroll, who held all dominion over the germs, speaking with the New York Herald Tribune in 1954. That was biological security. All research scientists share a thirst, a quest that is difficult to put into words. According to one, the person first becomes knowledgeable in the subject, then greatly steeped in it, and finally comes to possess that which is the feel of the problem. So totally immersed, he is often in a position to render the greatest of possible scientific service, namely, the elucidation of facts previously unknown. Bachrach inspired his young scientists to reach for this almost spiritual place. A year after the dedication, young Dr. Bachrach and Dr. Sidney Breeze, a wizard in microscopy, announced first, they had successfully photographed a virus using an electron microscope. Though the technology had been introduced in 1945, results were disappointing and photographic detail was difficult, if not impossible, to obtain. But recently, metallic shadowing helped add dimension and clarity to specimens, and Bachrach and Breeze, after an untold number of miscues, snapped a crisp image on a plate glass negative. For the first time in the 443 years since it was first diagnosed and described by the Italian monk Hieronymus Frascastorius, one of the smallest creatures known to mankind, the foot and mouth disease virus, could be seen in striking detail. The micrographs revealed something never before witnessed, a spherically shaped gray ball, 1/1,000,000th of an inch in diameter and even smaller than the tiny polio virus. Other work proved that viruses were not all spherical in shape, they also came in tadpoles, rods, and cubes. Scientists could now advance with research and development at great speed. The crown jewel was already paying dividends. The changing of the guard. After spending a decade building Plum Island into a preeminent center of research, Bachrach retired in 1963. The young man who the USDA had groomed for the position from the very day he graduated from Purdue ascended to the directorship. Jerry Jackson Callis would remain at that post for the next quarter century. Dr. Callis told the islanders he had no intentions of toying with Doc's legacy, but instead would build upon it. His goals, he said, were threefold. Develop the most successful research, maintain a high level of employee morale, and aspire to be the most respected laboratory, not only in the nation, but in the world. More than ambitious, the goals were heartfelt. His tenacious, almost childlike devotion to the island and its mission was never in doubt. As he encouraged communication between employees and management and promoted the freedom to speak one's mind, the new director promised firmness coupled with fairness. The most important resource on Plum Island is the employee, he said. He pledged to respect the personal dignity, recognize length of service and work achievement, maintain continuous employment and realistic salaries, and provide work security for all. Callis's final admonition invoked the age-old rule preached in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, believe in the golden rule and always practice it. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Because the nothing leaves policy discouraged most outside maintenance and support, Plum Island grew into a self-contained enterprise. For example, the island had its own machine and metal workshop from which Callis and the scientists sorted everything from roads to rabbit restraints, says veteran Plum Island draftsman Ben Robbins. That line became the motto of the engineering department. From completing in-house alterations and repairs to adjusting the elaborate laboratory containment system, detailed over hundreds of blueprints, no task was too difficult for the Plum Island workforce. By the time Callis assumed the reins, the engineering department, along with 2 laboratory buildings, an armed guard platoon, waterworks, animal corrals, electric power plant, fire department, sewage treatment plant, cafeteria, laundry, library, and 2 marine ferry boats, had transformed the island into a realm. Now Jerry Callis alone presided over a virtual kingdom, a fantastically beautiful, primeval island replete with miles of white beaches and green groves, bluffs and swamps and fields, in the cradle of the most coveted real estate in America. All of this at his command, protected by 24-hour armed guards and 350 people manning the island each day. What's more, no worker could pull seniority over the new director. Callis predated every single member of the staff. He helped design the buildings, and he authored the innumerable safety and security rules, placing him on a perch beyond reproach. The USDA once referred to the island as a small town unto itself. Others who knew better called it Jerry's Plantation. They referred to it as Master's Island, remembers former Plum Island scientist Dr. Carroll House, because he ruled it with an iron fist, like with slaves and all. In the 18th century, the locals sportively called the reclusive Samuel Beebe, who owned Plum Island back then, Lord of the Isles and King Beebe. Now Callis had risen to Beebe's level of esteem, and never was this more apparent as when his next-door neighbor paid a visit and welcomed him into the clique. Remembers Callis, Robert David Lyon, gardener, whose family has owned Gardener's Island since 1638, and who refers to himself as the 16th Lord of the Manor, telephoned me and said, "We're both lords of adjacent islands, we must meet." The eccentric codger ordered his crew to sail his yacht, adorned with a colorful flag bearing the Gardner family coat of arms, due south from his manor house to Plum Island Harbor, feasting on a light salad in the Plum Island cafeteria. The two lords hit it off immediately, like a boy showing off his toys. Callis toured his new friend around the island grounds. Old Gardner nodded and smiled and spun tales about the two island lairs from generations long ago, in an aristocratic voice not quite the Queen's English, but decidedly not American. Lord Gardner then departed, thanking his companion for lunch and extending an invitation for Callis to visit his manor house. With Lord Callis's permission, Gardner later sent over his niece, Alexandra Gollett, who was studying osprey while attending Yale University. In a rare dispensation, Dr. Callis allowed her and her classmates ashore to do some birding on Plum Island. For they made a special visit to the only marked grave that exists today on Plum Island, a deep pit where a Revolutionary War colonel, one Thomas Gardner, was buried in 1786. To his subjects, Callis was larger than life. He was greatly respected and, like many a monarch, seldom seen, spotted only occasionally in his blue seersucker suit hustling into the Lab 101 conference room. To others, Plum Island was his very own Emerald City. Callis was the wizard who, wearing a sorcerer's cap, threw the switches behind heavy curtains that shrouded the red brick administration building perched atop the old Army parade ground, regally surveying his windswept island lair. Adding to the intrigue around the time of his coronation, Callis married Lois Ann Roon, a local millionairess active in the South Old Garden Club. The couple moved into a rambling, secluded estate in South Old, tucked deep in the woods, boasting captivating views of sailboats plying Peconic Bay and the Hamptons. Almost to a man, the workers saw him as the rare benevolent dictator who meant what he said, and practiced what he said. Stanley Mickledger, a retired building engineer, concurs. Under Callis's reign, you had dedicated people. This was not just a job, it was also our home, like one big close-knit family, and we're still close after all these years and keep in touch. When I sailed on ships during the war, they always said, "It's not the ship, it's the crew that makes the ship." It was like the world of a ship over on Plum, and when we worked there, regardless of what anyone tells you or says, Callis took care of his people. Callis looked out for them. Back then, the place was just beautiful, remembers one worker. There were flower beds planted everywhere, the roads were swept clean and the grass was always freshly manicured. There were 14 or 15 guys dedicated just to what they called buildings and grounds who kept this place such that it was like being on a big estate. After all, it was the USDA's crown jewel, and diplomats and scientists from foreign lands like Sweden, Spain, Mexico, and Australia would visit often. The visitor policy had loosened a bit. The jewel required constant polishing so it could sparkle for all to see. When Callis encouraged open communication, he meant it. Every year, he orchestrated a family picnic and awards ceremony where he grandly recognized the seemingly small contributions of workers that, together, built Plum Island into a research powerhouse. Scientists and secretaries alike were called on stage and cited for outstanding performance and dedication. Because he listened to the workforce and implemented their suggestions, new ideas came to his desk each week. Many were put into practice, and all were acknowledged with gratitude. One worker suggested installing fluorescent arrows on each dolphin marking the harbor entrance, and another thought of a temperature alarm in the mouse house, the mice colony building. Still another proposed to install lighting and protective wire grills in front of the big oil burners in the dark basement passageways of the labs. An engineer solved the problem of ash accumulation in the incinerator room with a simple solution: install a blower that would blow the ash into the atmosphere with the smoke. He too got an award for this toxic remedy, and Plum Island burned biologically contaminated waste this way right up until the environmentally conscious 1970s. As chief of one of the foremost scientific laboratories, Dr. Callis also served as a scientific ambassador, representing the United States in many foreign lands and helping countries stem and eradicate germ outbreaks. Like Doc Shahin, he too pushed his Plum Island scientists hard to reach new heights. And they did. Vaccine May and animal sickness. Read the front page of the New York Times in 1967. Foot and mouth disease virus, believed to be the cattle plague, the fifth of the infamous 10 biblical plagues, Exodus 9:1-7. The scourge upon Egypt's livestock, might be removed forever from the earth. They were undoing the divine. Under Callis's direction, Plum Island developed a trivalent vaccine, capable of immunizing against the three major strains of foot and mouth virus, A, O, and C. Through trial and error, they grew virus in monkey kidney cell cultures they had cultivated years before, then killed the live virus with acetylethylneamine and added 2 mineral oils as enhancers. 4 years later, Plum Island reached another milestone, when scientists established the first rapid test, a radial diffusion test that quickly diagnosed virus infection and detected viral presence. At the moment, said a proud director Callis, we're having very good success. Lab 257 and Part 09 by Michael C. Carroll. The disturbing story of the government's secret.